Welcome to the Choosing Happiness podcast with me, your host, Rüdrani Devi, the Happiness Lady. In these conversations, we will be discussing an uncommon way to find joy in your life with weekly special guests. Did you know you could choose your happy? Won't you come and play and discover how these magical tools could work for you? Let's do this. Well, howdy, y'all. Rüdrani Devi, the Happiness Lady. Yes, I even wrote a book about it. So I'm thrilled beyond the beyonds to have my next Choosing Happiness podcast guest, Miss Cara Wright. Cara, thank you so much for being here. Y'all need to jump on YouTube. She's so pretty.
Thank you.
You are. I think you're a lovely lady inside and out. And I'm super grateful that you decided to come on to the podcast and talk about what we don't know what we're going to talk about just yet. Because you've been in Access probably longer than I have. We're talking about the Access consciousness, y'all.
Yes. I mean, and if happiness is partially the topic, I mean, that's kind of what led me to Access. I think it's been probably close to 10 years that I've been a facilitator. I don't know. So is that longer than you?
Well, I knew about Access in 2003. I actually became a BARS facilitator in 2011. I just kept hosting, CFs for Foundation. And then one day somebody said to me, you know more than she does. Why are you not teaching Foundation? And I was like, I don't want to be a CF. Why would I want to do that? And then Right Voice for You came along, and then I decided I had to. So that's for you, it's probably X-Men, but I digress. What got you into Access besides happiness?
I mean, I was incredibly depressed. I have, I had tried everything, and I was basically, my short story is my husband and I had been trying to get pregnant for 6 years. And my day job was I taught prenatal and postnatal yoga. I was a doula for 13 years prior to that. So I was around pregnant women all the time. I was around babies and birth all the time. I was desiring to get pregnant, wasn't working. And I was I had basically slid off of the deep end into being a big mess. And I tried everything to not just get pregnant, but to also try to stay sane through the whole thing. Because for anyone who has ever had infertility, it is the craziest experience to ever go through. And I was at that point of, and I had tried all sorts of stuff, acupuncture, meditation. I was a yoga teacher. I had a studio of my own. So,
oh, wow.
Millions of different therapies and all the things. And I was doing tapping with a friend of mine, EFT.
I used to do that with clients.
Yeah. So, I mean, and it really helped, but it never helped long-term. It I would always kind of fall back into being incredibly depressed. And so she actually sent me a little, I don't know, it was a 4-minute video of Dane talking about, I don't even remember what he was talking about, to be honest with you. And I was in such a state, I was I don't even care what this is. I'm going to go do it. And so I live in Washington State. And so, but I live on the eastern side of Washington State, and I got online and I found that there was a BARS class happening in Seattle 2 weeks later. And I went to my very first Access BARS and Foundation class with never having even gotten my BARS run. I just raw dogged it, because I was so miserable. And there was just something in that video, I mean, if any of you know who Dr. Dane here is, when he speaks to things, there's some things that really go through you, and it did for me. And I went to my first BARS class and Foundation class, and I didn't look back. I was a facilitator within I don't know, 8 or 9 months. I did it pretty fast.
Wow.
And ever since then, I mean, I really haven't looked back. I just have changed everything and anything, really. My life completely looks different now.
Well, that'll happen once you dip your toe into BARS. And just for those of you that may have never heard of Access BARS, maybe this is your first time for dipping your toe into Choosing Happiness. I don't know. It's 32 points on the head. Well, 32 points on the head. There's somebody that always asks in the chat, so what are y'all talking about? That, when you touch them in different groupings, it's like hitting a delete button where you're clearing thoughts, feelings, and emotions that are actually keeping you stuck. In the world that I came from, we would call that cellular memory, and it just keeps it locked into your body, that where you relive the trauma dramas that maybe are keeping them there, post-traumatic stress or whatever that could be.
Totally. I mean,
And yeah,
yeah,
so
for
it's
me, I think what started to show up was I actually, because I was like my own worst enemy in those days. Like I was so hard on myself and I had so many judgments about myself that I couldn't get out of that. And I was like I was destroying everything. Like I was actively, destroying my marriage with my partner. I was destroying my ideas about my body. And I was a mess. And I was like, I didn't really know in the very beginning. I remember thinking like, I don't even know how to explain this to people.
Hey, that's why I wrote this book.
Myself. I was like, I don't really know how to explain this to people, but it works. And, and then I actually started using it with my dual clients, which was a whole nother thing. Like it so affected people.
Oh, wow.
And gave them easier births. It was like unbelievable.
You
like,
would run their bars while they were delivering?
Basically what I did is I started like having it be part of the service that I provided. So like normally I would run the bars 2 to 3 times before they went into labor. Then I didn't even really tell them what I was doing. I mean, most pregnant women were like, they would just fall asleep because it's so relaxing.
Yeah,
they would just fall asleep, they would enjoy it. And I just was more like, if this does what they say it's going to do, because one of the things, if you've ever been with women during birth, is feelings, emotions, thoughts are like the antithesis of having an easy birth. If you are stuck in your feelings, stuck in some sort of emotion, stuck in some sort of thought, it's going to completely disrupt the process. And so I just started running bars just to kind of see what would happen. I knew for me, what started to show up is that, because one of the things I was really stuck in was that it was this sense of like, if I don't get pregnant, because I had been trying to get pregnant for so long, what the hell am I going to do? Like, and so like, to your happiness topic, like it's very hard to be happy if you don't feel like you have a future. Like, wow. And the future that your future
was, I must have children. I must be a mom. I must create a family.
That's what I was focused on. And so I got to this place where I was like, well, shit, if that doesn't happen, what the hell am I going to do with my life? What am I going to do? Like everything seemed very hopeless and seemed very like, there's no point to any of this. And unless this thing happens, which wasn't happening, there's no point. So for me, when I started getting my bars run and I started learning the tools of access, because like I said, like I became like a total, I like went through all these different classes. I went to the 3-day body classes. And so when I started to be able to have like a different perspective about myself, about my body, about my future, and that completely changed everything. Because for me, I'm like a huge futurist, which I did not know this about myself before access. I wouldn't, like, I just didn't know that that was even a possibility. And so for me, specifically, not having a future, you might as well just like throw me out with the trash, because is one of the worst things for me in life, is to not have this sense. And I don't have to know cognitively what my future is, but to not have a sense of a future, it is like destructive.
I can relate to that on some level. I didn't realize that I was always following the energy or following. I would feel pulled to things, which now, we might talk about as being like the light and heavy tool or whatever. And I've done so many freaking different things. And then it would dawn on me later what I had created from something that I thought was just nowhere's land. I mean, the biggest example I have is when I was a film producer and I was representing a lot of different directors. And one of my directors ended up being one of the creators of this little known new cable show, HBO. And one of the shows was The Sopranos. So he was like the first one of the executive producers. And was all about content and stories. And he sent me, girl, this is how long ago this is, on the VHS, okay? 3 episodes. And I was like, my jaw dropped because I was like, oh my God, we made these beautiful music videos. And now he's got, this, the Sopranos. And the one scene that, I remembered, because it was so shocking to me, was when Tony Soprano goes into a restaurant with the guy's Italian restaurant, and he's eating his pasta, and then this guy comes in and he looks over at him and he kind of does his shoulder to say that's the guy, and then all of a sudden he goes drop, and they all drop. The guy that he nuzzles or whatever shoots the guy. 2 other waiters grab him, drag him into the kitchen. They roll him up into a blanket, pull him out the door, drop him in a dumpster. Sure enough, the guy comes around, picks up the dumpster, hauls him off. And then they sit up and start eating their pasta again. Well, I was mortified. But when I was in India, and as some of you may or may not know, you can Google my name and you'll get 250,000 hits on this one. I was in a restaurant eating when there was gunfire. And I thought, oh, they're coming to take somebody out and then they're going to leave. Split second, if I hadn't been so horrified. But to me, that's like being a futurist in a really weird way. I told everybody to get under the table. And there were only 4 people that survived that attack in that restaurant. And it was 4 of the 6 people under my table. So give us an example of when you actually did create your future, when you had that aha moment of, oh, huh. That wasn't.
It was never really I think it was just more for me. It was like having more freedom to choose something other than what I had decided my future was. It was like getting me out of the conclusion of what, like, the only way I'm going to be successful is if I get pregnant at some point and I do the thing that I've been trying to do this whole time. Like, there was, for me, at that moment in time, there was no like quitting or getting out of it. And so I was like stuck in this like hamster wheel of doing something that wasn't working, and wasn't making me happy, wasn't necessarily it wasn't making my husband happy. But I couldn't like stop. I couldn't. And so when I started getting my bars run, when I started using the tools of access, when I started to actually realize that I could choose something different. It didn't really matter what I chose. It was just that I actually had choice, because I had created this no choice universe that I was living in for years. And that wasn't going to work. It wasn't working. It wasn't going to work. And so that's really what started to change it for me. And I mean, since then I've completely changed. Like, I don't have the life at all that I thought I would have, but I am thriving and I'm happy and I love it. And I know that I have choice. Like, I can choose anything. And it's so weird to say, but it's like, until I really started like learning the tools of access, giving myself the space to have choice, like, I didn't know that you could choose something different. Like,
I think that's the biggest piece, is knowing. Everybody thinks, okay, I've chosen this life. I'm married. I've got to have a good job, and I've got to tick all the boxes.
Whatever. I mean, it's like a lot of us have very similar, like, what we've decided things are, but it's like, for me too, it's like, it was so important that I be successful and like at whatever I chose. I mean, my parents were pretty like, whatever you want to do, you do it. But there was also this very like intense energy of like, okay, like, you've chosen something, now you have to succeed at it. Well, it's like, if you're on a path that's not working and you don't know how to get off the path,
sure,
it's not easy. It's definitely not fun, and it does not create happiness.
It does not. I concur. So was there a moment when you finally went, oh, geez, I actually really like my life. It didn't turn out any way that I thought it would, but
I mean, I really love stepping into all of the things, because I mean, the one thing that I've always been a seeker too. Like, I have done a million different things, like, read a million different books, and I've always been very interested in energy. I mean, in the body. Like, I was a yoga teacher. I had a yoga studio, but I specialized in prenatal and postnatal yoga. But my thing that I love to do personally was like energetic yoga, like learning about the nadis and the meridians and the chakras and all that stuff. So
Pranayama.
yeah. So I mean, I loved all of that. Like the thing that I was really cool that started to show up was that I started to realize that I was a source of something that was really cool, that it wasn't like something outside of me. I mean, I think that's one of the best things about the tools of access consciousness is that they really do reveal to you what you are the source for in your life and other people's lives. But it's like, that's really, for me, I really got bored if I was doing something else outside of, that it was like an outside thing, which most, spiritual modalities are. It's like,
Right.
I'm not a good follower at all. I'm not a good employee. Like, try to tell me what to do. It's not going to go well for you. You know what I mean? Like I have always been that kind of like, I will go my own way.
Well, you're a leader. That's what I see. When you say that, I find it so funny because I've seen you at work. You get to work on a lot of access classes and you know your shit. You do, and it's funny because sometimes people might say it comes across as, well, she just, and I'm like, no, she knows what the fuck she's doing. Yeah. I get it. Because that's how I was in film production. If you appear to have, I don't know, any kind of confidence, sometimes people look at you like, that bitch, what's she doing? What makes her think she's the know-it-all or whatever? But I see it as you being a tremendous leader. And I remember Gary, and Danny has said it many times too. They're the founder and co-founder of Access Consciousness, Dr. Dane here and Gary Douglas. The reason why we even know each other is talking about all these things. So anyway, it's like, they're always saying, you're the source. You're the source for creation, and choice creates. You're the source. Money's not the source, not having this particular job. You're the invitation. And I think that's why you were pulled in, because I would binge watch Dane, and he is this invitation. He's in it for consciousness, which is what I'm all about. I don't know. I've had daggers thrown at me and all kinds of things, and that person is just going to stand there and go, hey, I'm the source here. I'm going to be everything that I be. And
well, I don't have a point of view about intimidating people. So if somebody is uncomfortable, I kind of just let them be.
It's not a little bit of fun. No, I'm just joking. It's all good.
No, it's just like,
I look at it this way.
How people respond to somebody who, like you said, like oftentimes, it's just.
Oh, I piss people off. And I get it. And then I have to point to it and go, well, evidently I'm more potent than I think I am, because I just being me.
I mean, that's true too. Like when you do access and like you like, I do a lot of classes. And so it's like, you do have these like moments in time where you do become more potent. And so it's like you're a baby with a bazooka. You don't realize that, your tone has like gone to like from 10 to like 1,000. You're still, you're still like thinking you're at a 10, but you're not.
Right.
You're at 1,000. So it's like, it's something to be aware of, but it's also like, that is one of the things that I like isn't the right word, but like, I enjoy not having to turn myself down.
Right. Yeah.
And if that
I remember talking to Dane once, and I was like, how am I facilitating these classes? How is it these people are showing up? Because half the time I feel like I'm running around with my head cut off or wherever. I wish there were two of me. And that's why I'm so grateful for my team. And then he goes, well, it's different when you're facilitating, because you drop all your walls and barriers, and you're that invitation. You're holding the space for your class. And it's not the same. He goes, there have been many times where I get done with a class, and I'm like, what did I even say? And that was such a gift for me to hear that. Well, I want to hear about more of the classes that you facilitate and all of that, but I got to take a moment for our sponsor, because that who paid the bills. So I just briefly got Mandu. I like to call it the electrocution workout. They do not enjoy that description at all. It's a bunch of Yeah, it's like a spacesuit with TENS units in it, and you just work out for 15 minutes, and it builds all these muscles in your body that you never knew you even had because you can't get to them in normal ways. But I'm going to let our sponsors tell us about it, so we'll be right back.
Mandu is a boutique fitness studio concept, and we are actually the first FDA cleared EMS training workout. And what we do essentially is that we will have a client come in, we will hook them up to a whole body EMS suit, and then we perform a workout on a medical grade device called an eFit device. And that device will send an electrical current to their body through electrodes in these suits that we put on them. And this electrical current is just basically stimulating the electrical current that you already have inside your body. So everybody is made up of electrical impulses. It's what helps you walk, helps you move. We're tapping into that and making it stimulate it more to where we can cause a muscle to actually contract involuntarily. So we can actually create resistance without adding a load to the body. So that is why we, as you see online, it always says ultra low impact. It is scientifically proven. It is absolutely ultra low impact.
And we're back. Sorry. I'm just so excited to have Cara Wright as my guest on the Choosing Happiness podcast. Yes, even wrote a book about it. Shameless plug again. I know. And speaks several languages. I do. Cara, I know that you've been in Access for about 10 years. I became a CF in 2017 because I wanted to be a right voice for you facilitator. And that's what was going to happen because they weren't going to let me skip over it, all the things. And now I love being a CF. It's one of my biggest joys, that and singing, as you know. So what classes do you love to facilitate? Do you have classes coming up? Can you tell us a little bit about them? What it is that brings you happy when you're, in it.
I do tend to do a lot of specialty classes where the theme is empowering you to not turn yourself down. Like right now I have a call coming up that's called Appropriately Inappropriate.
Oh.
I do.
My body just got turned on, y'all. I can't tell you how many times I embody that exactly, especially with my family.
You were talking to me about before the break, it's like one of the things that's really fun about when you start to use the tools of access consciousness is that things start to show up that you didn't realize were actually part of who you be as a being. Like there's things that I have stepped into and things that I realize I have capacities with that, prior to, I probably either didn't know I had them, kind of was using them as an idiot savant, function, like not realizing what I was doing or being, but being it. And then also like this weird thing we do where we assume everybody can do what we do. And what happens with access, it's like you realize, I just assume it's easy for everyone to push that inappropriate button.
Right.
It's not, so I've done I did a call last year called Rule Breaker. I tend to do the kinds of calls that are encouraging people to not turn themselves down based on what their environment is telling them is appropriate or not appropriate. So anyway, that's my next call coming up. But the other thing I do a lot of is X-Men, which is a specialty of access consciousness that deals with all of those neurodivergent, neurodivergent is the, PC term of it now, but it's autism, ADD, ADHD, OCD, dyslexia, anyone who's been diagnosed with any sort of, you're just wired differently. There's so many different ones now. We've gone from, having a few labels to a bazillion labels because people think the more you can define something, the more you can make it better, which is the exact opposite of what actually is. So that's the body of work that I really love talking about because it's really interesting. I grew up my whole life and I did not realize I was autistic at all. And there was probably a 2 or 3 year period of time where I was going to access classes and it didn't matter what question I asked. Gary Douglas would always say to me, what part of how autistic you are, you're not getting. And I'm like, what the fuck is he talking about? I am not autistic, because in my world, it's I've never been diagnosed autistic. Nobody's ever even I just thought I was really weird. I knew I had OCD, that I knew. I knew that I was labeled shy, like I knew school was really hard for me. I knew I was really smart, but like was in all the dumb classes. Like looking back now, I don't know how I didn't know I was autistic, except that I just grew up in that generation that I'm a Generation X. So you just coped. You just figured out how to make it work for yourself. And I had gotten really good at that. So like when I finally asked a question, like, what do you mean, Gary? And I started realizing, shit, like all these things that I've been being and doing. And the cool thing that I love about this body of work within Access is that it takes those disabilities and it looks at them from the perspectives of their abilities, that you're not like disabled. You actually have some way in which you function here that is different, and it is actually an ability. You just have to learn how to use it. It's like if you landed in a planet and like there's so many things that you could label as a disability, but they're actually abilities. It's just the perspective that people take. So I love those classes.
Me too. Me too. I came this close to actually becoming certified as an X-Men facilitator, because I've taken all the classes. I just haven't watched that last video. There's all these prereqs, y'all, that we've got to do, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful for them. It's funny because I'm a boomer, so we didn't even have those labels yet. I didn't understand why I had braids down to my waist, and I was always doing this thing with my hair and.
Oh yeah, stimming. Like, and now I look at it, I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes so much more sense. Like, and just being able to not have a point of view about it, not be stigmatized by something, but also like be able to explore how you can use it to your advantage. It's such a different way of being with things, because you are who you are at the end of the day, and the more you have ease with being who you are in the world, like everything becomes more easy.
True story. That's the thing about it. The good, the bad, the ugly. Even when something really makes my butt itch, I have the tools to get out of it. And I found that one of the best things I can do for myself is to actually just stop and take a breath. And then what is this? What can I do with it? Can I change it? How can I change it? It's almost like I'm a deer in the headlights for a minute, and somebody will say something that I feel like is really inappropriate, but they may not. There's your appropriate class. They may not get it at all. And I'm like, wow, that is a really hurtful thing. And then when I put my walls and barriers down, I'm like, oh, they've been impaled to believe that that's actually a kindness or is expected, or that judgment is actually something that this world really understands, or whatever it is. I'm not going into any specific thing, but I can't tell you many times that I've been like, and now it's like my shoulders just melt away, walls and barriers down, expand out to the 8 corners of the room, or however far I can get. And it changes everything. It changes everything, where I don't have to be the effect of it. It's like,
exactly. That's
okay.
You don't have to be the effect of it. You can, you start to be the effect of your environment. If you're the person who can stay in that energy of question in a room, you actually are the dominant person in that room.
Yeah.
And
greatness.
This reality teaches you that, you have to grab something and figure it out and define it and conclude what it is. And that's how you fix things or make things possible, or whatever it is that you're trying to do. And it's just so much of what I've learned about myself and what I've learned about life, really, in creation, is that everything that they taught you in school is either completely incorrect, or it's like the 180 antithesis of it. It's like
the opposite of what
the opposite of it. It's one of my favorite tools is to like, to recognize when I'm in conclusion about something, and be willing to go, okay, if it wasn't what I've decided this is, what would it be? And just let that be, in my world. Because it's like, we're the ones that, like, we're the ones that build the boxes that we then like complain we're stuck in.
Right? I mean, how many times have you been the greatest?
Big time.
Seriously, I mean, how many times have you been the greatest in the room, but never as great as you? Because you're like, oh, I don't want to offend anybody, or we have this idea.
Totally. Like we
It's
are our biggest,
crazy.
we could be our biggest advocates, but we also, most of the time, we're our biggest suppressors. And so just being able to like know that, you know, am I good at not doing that all the time? No, like I still find myself, turning down the volume knob, or I can perceive when people think I'm a bitch, am I like just fine with it all the time? No, like sometimes I feel like I have to defend myself, or I have to say, explain myself, or whatever it is. And it's like, but it's getting easier and easier all the time to be just like, because you can't control the world.
You know that song?
I know a lot of us try, but you can't control the world. So you just like,
we can't even control ourselves half the time.
Yeah. Well, why? I mean, that's the thing. Like, we really shouldn't be having that as a target to control ourselves. Like, it's more like, what if you could go anywhere in the world, be present with yourself, be in the question, and know that whatever shows up, you can handle it, or you can step into it, or you can enjoy it, or whatever is showing up, but it doesn't have to be this controlled thing.
Yeah, I was always trying to be that with my family, Cara, because I'm one of 6. Raised in a Roman Catholic family. One of them broke out. She's Mormon now. She was doing her own thing. 6 Mormon children, all the stuff. And I was always, that one where there were a lot of times where I would have the holiday. Part of it was I didn't want to travel, but, to their houses or whatever. I don't know, whatever the things are. And now my mom lives with me, so all the holidays are here. And there I was. I found myself slipping into that whole thing again about being the perfect hostess and da-da-da-da. And I had a moment, girl. My mom turned 90 the day after Gary and Dane's birthday. It was so funny. And they were all descended upon the house with, cots and all this stuff. And I blew up. I won't go into the details. It was really late at night, and I had to be up early to teach in Germany, via Zoom. And and I just lost it. And then, but I got that it was better for me to blow my cap than to cut my arms and legs off. And it was funny. A few people just left, because I went back to wherever they were staying. Everybody got really quiet around me. I went to bed. The next day I apologized. And since that moment, it's like I finally was willing to be all of me. And it's really different. Now people are helpful when they come. They actually put their dishes away. They're a lot nicer to me. They're always like, do you mind if I blah, blah, blah? I mean, it's really funny. I didn't know that was going to get that kind of a reaction, because I was always that person that would always, okay, I'm going to put up with it. Gary says sometimes you do things you don't want to do because it's easier. Well, it wasn't easier. It wasn't easier.
Well, you also have to be willing to be whatever energy is going to work.
Right.
Too,
Right. And I'm thankful that I did that now, because now I have a greater appreciation for my siblings, which is interesting, because it never shows up the way you think it's gonna,
No, but I think that's the thing to me, like being, because access, constantly is shifting and changing. Like that's one of the things I love about it is it's never the same. So it's like you could take foundation. Well, I take foundation once a year, and it's never the same class, right? Yeah. It's like always very, very different. And so, because it's constantly, consciousness is changing and moving, and, and the whole purpose of access consciousness is to access more of your consciousness, and it shifts and changes for all of us. And so, it's like, that's one of the things that I just love about it, is that there's always more, and there's always something else, not just to consciousness, but to you and to what you can create and what you can choose. And it's like kind of the sky's the limit.
That's what the beauty about it, you guys, because the thing is you mentioned it earlier, I get bored if I have to do the same thing over and over again. And yet we're teaching this class that changed, like foundation, well, they all do. But foundation, every year we take a global foundation class from the from Gary and Dane, the creator and co-creator. And they throw out anything that doesn't read anymore. And then they add in all this stuff. And I mean, oh my goddess, these last two global foundations, I mean, and then other classes, that foundation book, do you realize it's changed 3 times since the last global foundation? 3 times I've had to rewrite it because, and I've taught it right after each time, because I get so excited about it being new. And you guys, whoever shows up in the class, it's your class. So that energy is creating the class also. It's never the same.
That's what makes it so cool. Is like every person, I mean, with my X-Men classes, like I love facilitating them because every single person that shows up to them is different. Like there are no 2 X-Men that are the same. And so every single class is very, very different. And it's based on like who shows up, which is, I love that. I love that, you know, not only are they come to the table completely different, and then they also step into so many different things when they're in the class. It's such a cool experience. It's
such a safe place also, because so many people have made themselves wrong for their so-called, you know, diagnoses. Diagnoses.
Yeah.
You know, what do you mean I'm ADHD? I remember I kind of avoided those classes at first because I didn't want to be that weirdo of magnitude. You know, it's like with Gary asking you, but I remember it was the beginning of COVID, Christmas 2020, and I'd never met Rachel O'Brien. And she reached out to me because she was doing instead of the 10 days of Christmas, the 10 misfit days of something of Christmas. And she was having each person read part of Gary's book, The Place, and sing a Christmas song and another song. And she gets a hold of me like the day before it starts. And I'm on the last day of I've got another foundation day the next day. And I was like, well, I'll have to do it after I'm done with my foundation class. And I rattled off all this stuff, and she just started laughing at me. And I go, what's going on? And she goes, are you going to be able to do this tomorrow? I went, oh, you want me to? Okay, so I'm going to do this tomorrow. And she goes, wow, you are such an X-Men of magnitude. And I got a little pissed, you know, because I'd heard a little bit about it, but I didn't know. I just knew that I had this perception that X-Men were all over the place and all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm into form and structure. You should see my closet. I have, 10 pink purses, and they're by color order. And if you open my cabinets, all my cans are, but I realized that because I was such a fan of form and structure, so that I could be as chaotic as possible, I knew where everything was. I mean, I know if I put a sock a certain place that it normally is, and I have to grab it and put it back where it's supposed to be. That's how ADHD, and OCD that I am. And when I was finally willing to embrace it and see it for the capacities, kind of saved my ass. That was like that last little piece I needed to know about me to make me okay with me.
Exactly. That's the whole thing. It's like and then you can learn to use it to your advantage so that it doesn't become this, just because your point of view does create your reality, which is one of the things we talk about all the time. And so if you have the point of view that the way that you are in the world is bad or wrong, you're constantly trying to like avoid it or hide it or change it or fix it or fix you. And it's like, if you just allow it to be, all manner of things can show up.
Yeah. Yeah. True story.
There's a weird thing that shows up here that you're supposed to, like, we have this weird energy of like, you're supposed to be like everyone else, except that no one is like anyone else. So it's strange. Who even came up with that? But it's like such a it's not like you, it's like it's one of those things that you will constantly chase after, but you'll never catch it.
Yeah, you can't. There's no person greater than you, y'all.
Thing. Yeah,
that's a true story. Yeah. So you mentioned you have some classes coming up. You may not know dates, but I'm going to plant them underneath in the show notes. So mention the classes you're going to have, and we're not giving you dates right now, people. But.
Yeah. I mean, the call I'm doing, the appropriately inappropriate call. That's actually a week from now, so that starts on the 16th. And then in the new year, I'm going to be doing a 5-part series with all of the X-Men tools. That's going to be looking at like ADD and OCD and dyslexia and all of that. And then I'll be doing the 2-day and 1-day and a 2-day X-Men class in February of next year, which seems like far away, but it's not that far away.
No,
I was like,
no.
Oh my God, it's already halfway through November almost. It's crazy.
It's so weird because I'm in a different country 3 months in a row. So December, then January, then February. And then in January, I'm also teaching a foundation in between flying in and flying out. And then now I've decided I'm doing the money workbook again because I got asked back, when are you going to do that again? It's so funny. You got repeat offenders that just love doing that money workbook. And I love it because every time I don't know about you, but every time I facilitate that class, I make more money. And it's not just because people pay to take the class. It's like,
it comes in very non-linear ways.
It's so strange. It's so strange. I got 3 checks in the mail the other day that I wasn't expecting at all for really random reasons. It's just, I was like, okay, I'll receive that. That's nice. And then out of the mouth of a dog brought me $40 in cash. Just ran up to me and had 2 20s.
I need for my dogs to bring me money in cash. Did you say in the bathroom?
No. I don't have a dog. I was outside taking my walk early in the morning. I like to get my steps in and, I listen to my recordings then, like Dane and whatever will be in my ear. And I talk to the bunnies. We have lots of bunnies in Tennessee. And this dog randomly runs up to me and I'm, hey boy, how you doing? And I pet him. He just, and then money falls out of his mouth. And I'm like, did that really happen? And I pick it up and I'm looking around. I don't see anybody anywhere. And I'm like, I guess it's mine. Thank you, Rover, or whoever you are. And they just bounded off. Big dog.
I will have that. I would
like
to that.
So it was in the middle of teaching that class. So I was like, you guys are not going to believe this. Because we did all these clearings to, be the invitation for money. Because, money follows joy. And, I don't think about, I just be and then money shows up. I feel so happy about it. Yeah, I love it too. I love it for me. Well, okay. Now, this is called the Choosing Happiness podcast. So I got to ask you, Cara, my listeners want to know, what do you do to get you happy on?
I mean, I spend the time with my pack. I call it like my happy place is my pack, which is like I have 2 Dobermans and a Rottweiler and my husband. And like, that's what I do to get happy is I just be around them.
I just noticed that she mentioned the dogs before her husband.
He's just one of the pack. He's just like me. I would mention the dogs before me. Like they kind of precede.
I've seen so many pictures of you with your dogs and they just melt around you. Mm-hmm. It's such a beautiful thing. My cat and we have that relationship. My mom has a cat and I have a cat. They're both 13. They do not like each other, but we totally communicate with them in an X-Men capacity. Mm-hmm. I'll just say outside and she runs to the door and starts meowing. Yeah. And it's just a beautiful relationship I have with her, 13 years old.
I mean, I love being surrounded by animals. Mm-hmm. That's my happy place for sure.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so very much for being a guest on the show.
Pleasure. Thanks for asking me.
And I'll make sure that everybody has all your info so they can find you. I mean, you're on Facebook, Instagram, AC site, all the places, all the usual places.
I have a website too. I'll make sure you have it. Yeah.
Fantastic. So I love it so much. So you guys, if you enjoyed this podcast episode, you could hit the subscribe button below. And if you know anybody that this particular conversation could be a contribution to, why don't you share it with them? Especially if they ain't in their happy place, So again, thank you. And thank you all of you for listening now and in the future. And until next time, ciao, y'all.
Thank you so much for choosing happiness. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, share, and give us a like. And if you want more happy, subscribe to the Choosing Happiness membership where you can play directly with me, Rüdrani Devi, the Happiness Lady. How does it get any better than that?